Welcome everybody to our talk. We will be speaking about Jetpack Compose and SwiftUI, a fun with declarative UI. I am Peter-John. Welcome. I'm a mobile engineer at Paystack, a Nigerian-based fintech company, and but I'm actually based in South Africa. I'm a GDE for Firebase, so if I have any questions about Firebase, hit me up on Twitter. My handle is at the bottom, Peter Apples, and I have a really cool podcast, or I think it's cool, called Talking with Apples. And my co-speaker today is?
I'm Pamela Hill. I'm an Android engineer at GoDaddy Studio. Maybe you know it as Over. It's a graphic design app for small businesses and entrepreneurs to make their social media really awesome. You can find me on Twitter at Pamela A. Hill. That extra A is not a typo. There's another lady called Pamela Hill, so I had to improvise and use my middle name. You can also check out my blog where I talk about Kotlin stuff and Android stuff, and it's called PamelaAhill.com. Very original, huh? We just want to say we're so excited to be chatting to you today. It's been my dream to speak to the Nigerian audience for a very long time. And while we're not there in person, we are super, super excited to be speaking to a Nigerian audience today. Thank you for the committee for choosing us. And thank you for the audience for attending our talk. We're super excited. So let's go. DJ, come on. Let's go. All right, so let's start by thinking about declarative UIs. So our talk is Jetpack Compose and SwiftUI, fun with declarative UIs. So it's a really good place to start by thinking about why do we want to have declarative UIs and what that actually means. So a declarative UI is really going to describe what elements you want on your UI and to a certain degree what they should look like, but you're not going to be very specific about where they're positioned, the exact positioning or the exact visual style. You're going to give somewhat of an idea of visual style, but and positioning, but in terms of layout, but you're not going to be extremely, extremely prescriptive. So it's also really helpful to compare our current or our new style of developing UIs, declarative, with the old style of declaring or creating UIs, which is imperative. Now, with the imperative style, you code out the steps to mutate the state of the UI. So what does that mean? Say that we have a UI with a button on and we want to change the label text based on, for example, the number of times we've clicked on it. So on Android, we would code out the XML layout to have a button on. And then in our Kotlin code or our Java code, we would use find view by ID to get that button. And then in our Kotlin code, each time the onClick listener is fired, we will add like 1 to a counter and update the state. So that is imperative style. In a declarative style, we're just going to describe what the UI should look like. And in Android, that is Jetpack Compose, and on iOS, there is SwiftUI. So declarative, we're going to describe the UI in Kotlin, and we're going to have a nice demonstration of what that's going to look like shortly.
Awesome. So what is the benefit of this new declarative UI system? So as Pamela just mentioned, state, where you would pretty much have a on-click listener and you'd click something and you'd have to update the counter manually once you've actually clicked it. Whereas state is handled a lot easier within declarative UI. So in Android, we would then have mutable state of and the remember lambda, and this will pretty much help with recomposition of when we're actually doing recomposition of views to actually hold state of specific variables and actually even change the state of what's actually happening within your UI. And on an iOS, from an iOS point of view, we pretty much have property wrappers that help us with this also. So we have the state property wrapper, we have binding property wrappers, and this is also great to pretty much help hold state and actually react to anything that's specifically happening, let's say, between our logic and our view. We also, declarative UIs are also more compatible with reactive architectures, and toolkits. So if you ever use live data or RxJava or any of those, these kind of work really well. Flow also really works well with this declarative UI way of developing UIs. And even on live data, we actually have something where you can change your live data to as state, and this will actually convert your live data stream to a state object, which then helps with you holding state within your view. In Swift itself, or in iOS, we have something very similar, which you obviously have your RX Swift, or you could have done some stuff manually before that. But Swift or Apple also has a first-party library called Combine that works pretty much perfectly with SwiftUI, and that pretty much helps you build great reactive architectures like MVVM, MVI, and even composable architectures. All of these declarative UIs are also compatible with older UI kits, so pretty much like you can use your older code that you might have written a custom view or something. You can pretty much wrap that around some type of view. So in Android, it would be like, it's called Android View. You could wrap that around your older thing, and then you can actually use it within Jetpack Compose. And on iOS, you can use, I think it's still called UI representable, where you can pretty much take that specific view from your older the UI kit views, and you can then use it within SwiftUI. And this kind of there's a lot more. One of the biggest things is that it's obviously fun to learn a lot more things, right? Because learning is always good. Some of the downsides, though, of declarative UI is it's a very big mindshift change. So the way you develop your UI is completely different. You have to kind of be a lot more forward thinking. You have to think about state from the beginning before you kind of like developing a specific screen. It might also be really daunting to learn something completely new. I think even with learning something new is always awesome, but I think especially if you're working in big teams and your team is trying to adopt something, learning it to be as efficient as you were pretty much in an older UI toolkit could take a lot more longer, and it could be struggling a lot more learning something completely new, especially as big as a UI toolkit. And like I mentioned, with the mindshift change, you kind of have to like think ahead and figure out like what do you want this thing to do and what it needs to look like, because you're pretty much building the end state and then you're mutating that view based on state coming from logic that's actually changing. One of the things that's kind of not great about these declarative UIs these days is that they're both very immature. So we literally, I think it was like a few weeks back, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we got Jetpack Compose 1.0 stable. So there's probably a lot of things in there that you're probably missing that you might think, hey, like, you know, this is something that I need, like, let's say, a map view. You'd still have to use the old Android map view and then like wrap it around like Android view in order to use it in Jetpack Compose, because there's not like, I would say, a compatible, well, there's not a native component that actually works with Jetpack Compose, so you have to wrap it. These are also not compatible with the older platform languages. So Jetpack Compose was built in Kotlin, and it's using a lot of the Kotlin language features that maybe are not available in Java. So if you write in Java, you pretty much can't really use this. And again, with SwiftUI, it's exactly the same. You can't really use it with Objective-C. And obviously, sometimes when you are writing, when you want all this control, it might actually seem like you're writing a lot more code also. So sometimes it can seem as the code can be a little bit more verbose. Benefits, though, of using the same language, because at this point now you're writing your UI and your logic all in one language. So with SwiftUI, it's all going to be written in Swift, and with Jetpack Compose, it's all going to be written in Kotlin. There's no more XML code that you need anymore. So interoperability, the interops is kind of not necessary anymore for having Java and Kotlin, but then also having this XML interpreter that needs to kind of like render the view. You can also like mix a bunch of controls and stuff. So now you can actually have like for loops and stuff if you want to, and a little bit of logic that you should be obviously putting it in logic files, but like you can kind of control these structures with like for loops and stuff like that. It will make everything easier to read. And that's because everything will kind of be in one place. And this meaning that you don't have to switch between XML files and Swift and Kotlin files and storyboards versus writing everything in Swift. Sweet.
Sweet.
So we're gonna do Clone Wars. Yeah, Pam, are you gonna go first, or am I gonna go first?
I believe you said you wanted to go first, so you're welcome to. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi,
So
ladies and gentlemen.
Cool. So I will be doing iOS. I am just to share my screen again because I didn't share my whole screen previous to this. And then I can hopefully see Xcode.
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. Cool. So what we're going to be building, well, what we previously done with this talk was that we wanted to pretty much build this whole view. But because of time today, we're a little bit like time constrained. What we're going to do is we're just going to build this view over here. So this is pretty much the image, some text, and a button. And then we're pretty much going to put it into whatever what the specific view is. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build this separately from here. And yeah, hopefully we can pretty much get something up and running in a few seconds. I'm going to just comment out this code, but I'm going to build it a little bit different anyway, just because I think I could probably build it a lot easier. Maybe. Let's see. Cool. So the first
Peter-John, can you make your font a bit bigger, maybe?
Okay, cool. I can definitely do that.
Thank you.
And I'm also going to just move this to the side. Is that fine?
Just a little bit bigger, maybe.
Okay. So maybe it's just the screen, but it's like super massive on my side.
No, it's fine. It's good like this. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to build that list quickly. And we're pretty much going to build the cell first. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a struct, and we're going to call this, I think, episode cell, and this is going to be the a type of view. And with this view, it's pretty much telling us that we're going to create a view, and it kind of conforms to a specific protocol. So it wants us to have some kind of body, right? So our body here is technically going to be a var. We're going to call it body, and this is going to be of type view. So I'm going to do this, some view. And in here at the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a V stack because it's going to complain until we kind of have this. So now we kind of have our view set up. And what we pretty much want to do here is we want
PJ, I think you just hit the mute button.
Okay.
Yep, great.
Awesome. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Awesome. I don't know what happened. I got muted.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So we're gonna have a V stack, and a V stack is pretty much a vertical stack where you can pretty much put things below each other, right? So what we're going to do here is that we're going to firstly just add a text. We're going to add some text, and we're going to add an image right next to it. So we're going to say text. And in this thing, we're going to have some text, right? So we're going to have something over there. Let's actually make sure our preview is showing. Cool, our preview should have something over there. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pretty much have some kind of like, we're gonna have an image and we're gonna have two images, well, two text views first. This is pretty much gonna be our two detailed views. So we're gonna have, I think this will be I'm actually gonna just put this in your length, and the first one will actually be title. And then from there, we will have probably an H stack. So H stack is a horizontal stack. And here we're gonna have an image in here, and we're actually gonna put those text views in there. We're gonna refactor this a little bit. So we'll just kind of put a string in here for now because we don't really know what that image is gonna be. Until we actually get the data in there. I don't know if this is updating. Cool. With our image though, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this resizable because we want to resize it because otherwise it's gonna be like massive, and we're gonna probably give it a frame. And you can change the width and the height and all of that in here. So we're gonna make this 80. 80, and we'll make the other one 70. And we don't really want the alignment over here. So we can remove that, and we can say we want the corner radius of, I don't know, 6 or 7. So that should be fine over there. And then we actually want to move this out over here and move our this stack into this one over here. So that should give us the first part of it, and then we want our download button. So our download button is going to be over here. Button. This is all going to come together very quickly, and inside of this, we're going to have some kind of action and a label. So our action is going to be there, and inside of our label, we're probably going to want an image. No, I don't want that. So we're just going to have that, and then where we have this over here, we're going to have an image because that's going to be the image that's actually going to come through. And this image is pretty much going to be our download button. So the reason why this is actually not showing on the screen is because I have not put this over here. So let me actually just do this for now. Hopefully it will then show some stuff. So we can kind of see this in a separate preview over here. So something's coming together. We have a massive image, obviously on the side over here. But we'll fix that over now. And then we're gonna put some spacing in here, just so that we can have some spacing in between the button and this particular text over here. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to add some text for the description. So we're going to add some text over here. And this is going to be our description. I'm just going to put the description for now. So that's going to be cool over there. And then our last thing that we probably want is probably a divider. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to create a list. And our list is actually going to be that specific divider for us. So we want this in our VStack. So we probably want to wrap this around a VStack because now we want this to be below that. So we're going to create another VStack over here, and we're going to actually take this, put this in here, and this is our VStack over there. So we'll put this underneath so it can be actually below our text. That should be okay. And then what we can do is we can add a little bit of like padding and stuff like that. So we can do, generally what we want to do is we want to add some like alignment. So in this over here, we can actually add some alignment. So alignment and spacing. Our content is already there, so we don't really need that. And we can say we want probably dot leading, and we want some spacing. And normally I just choose 15 because it's my lucky number, I guess. So we can add that over there. This should be inside this. Sorry. Cool. And then we could probably add a little bit of padding onto these. So we can, I guess we could say we want some, I guess, bottom padding. Bottom padding, sorry. And then we can say we want it to be bottom. And then maybe like 12 or something like that. So that should be cool. And then we can even do, more padding. We can do like horizontal padding, which will be on the left and the right. So we can say more padding, and it's a horizontal, and we can do 15 again, because again, my lucky number. So this should pretty much update over there. So that's cool. And so now what we're gonna do is we are going to now put this inside of here. So I'm actually just going to delete, I'm actually just gonna do it up below this. So now we need some variables, right? So we need an image name, and we need some text length and an image over here. So I'm just gonna create some variables quickly. I'm gonna say var image is a string, var, what else do we need? We need a title, which is a string, and var length, which is also a string. And then we need our description also. For cool. So what we're gonna do now is we're actually gonna put these in here. So this will go in here, and we have a title and length and our description over here. Cool. And it's gonna complain here because it's a constructor, so it's asking me to change that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually not gonna do this anymore so that we don't see the preview, but we're gonna see it when we actually get up over here. So what I'm gonna do now is, because we're in a VStack over here, I'm actually just gonna create a list. And then this list is going to take in my episodes. So I'm gonna do series, dot seasons, dot the first season. And then I'm just gonna unwrap this. You shouldn't be unwrapping, but it's just for time. And then I'm going to use something called key paths. So I'm gonna do dot ID, and I probably need ID here. Why is it not? It's not giving me. It's not giving me what I want. Can't convert this type episode to NTView. Oh, because it probably wants a view. So what I'm gonna do in here is I'm gonna say episode in. Okay, cool. So it just wanted the actual episode because we're looping through. And then from there, I'm going to create the episode cell. And I'm going to then give it the value. So we have an episode.image and episode.title. So dot length And the last one is episode, the description. And hopefully this should render. So let me just resume the preview. And yay, so we kind of have this this view kind of like now populated with our stuff over there. And then something that we can just do to kind of make it nice is we can then do, because we like dark mode, we can just do dot preferred, I can never remember this name, preferred colored schema, and then dot dark, and then we kind of have it in dark mode, which then makes it look maybe a little bit more pretty. Yeah, and that's me. And then we can delete all of this because this is a bit more it's a lot of verbose code. Yeah, awesome.
Very
Thank
nice,
you.
very nice.
And I will stop sharing my screen and going into the vortex.
Yay, let's give Peter-John a hand. Yay! Remember to, yeah, exactly. Yeah, hand clapping. Yes. Yay. All right. Great. So let's have a look at Android. I'm just going to share my screen. Let me do the entire screen. Okay. Sorry for the flippies. All right. Peter-John, can you be my eyes and ears? Can you see my screen? Okay, I'm gonna enter presentation mode now, so you should be able to see everything.
Yeah, it looks good.
Looks good. Okay, so folks, we're going to be creating a Queen's Gambit Netflix clone. So what we're going to be doing is just this section over here. I'm going to show you a couple of things before we get started, just to give some context. So unfortunately, I'm not really sure how to flip between views because presentation mode is hard. So I'm going to start by just showing you the data structure, and then I'll go back into presentation mode. Okay, so the data structure is that we have a series. Each series has a season, and each episode has, or each season has an episode. So then we took they're all data classes, nice Kotlin data classes, and then we created just a hard-coded series called Queen's Gambit, and we just gave it some resources and strings and links and stuff so that we have a nice populated user interface, right? Sorry about this. Okay, let me just see if I can do this a bit faster. All right, the next thing that I want to show you is we've got some colors here. They're basically just defined with constructors. We've got a dark gray and a light gray. I'm going to go back into presentation mode very soon. We've got some shapes, some types, which is typography, and then we've got a theme defined here, which is based on material design, where we associate the palette to the colors, the typography to typography, the shapes to shapes. You got it. Okay, so let's have a look at our Netflix clone. Let me go back into presentation mode before our audience gets upset with me for not showing them what I'm doing. All right, so the basic building block of Jetpack Compose is this composable function. It takes something, maybe, and it returns unit. So it doesn't return anything. Okay. So what we can do is we can annotate a composable with preview, and that's going to give us this nice preview look. And what we do here is we say, okay, use the theme, Netflix clone theme that we defined that I mentioned a second ago. I didn't show you the very big text, but I'm sure you'll understand it's there. And then we have a Netflix clone called, and we pass in that Queen's Gambit variable that we had before. I'm not going to go through the whole definition of this screen, but what's really important is this section. We're going to iterate over the Queen's Gambit. We pass in from Netflix clone preview, we pass in Queen's Gambit. It comes into, it will be the series parameter, yes, parameter. I was just thinking argument, parameter, it's parameter. All right. We're going to iterate over the seasons, we're going to iterate over the episodes, and for each of them, we're going to have an episode clone. So if I were to say like, we just want to show the first episode. It will be season with the range or the index parameter 0, and then dot episodes, and then the range the index operator 0. So just using arrays. But that's fine. It's just a little complication. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to define our episode. So this is my cheat code, and I'm going to hide my cheat code away from you. I'm going to hide it from you. It's just there so that if I lose my nerve, I've got something to fall back on. It's not always easy doing live coding. Okay, so this is what our, if we refresh everything, this is what it's going to look like. It's just going to show everything at the top. It's just rendering. Hopefully it will actually render and not just play with rendering. Okay, so we've got this section over here, and it's going to iterate over some episodes. So let's create our episode clone composable. We've annotated with @composable. It's a function that takes the episode and returns unit. Great. Right. So first, we're going to create 2 rows. The first row is for the image and the text with the title and the button, and the second one will be with the text that has the description in. So we're going to say, okay, I'm going to show you first the most simple case, which is just the text with the description in. So it's going to be episode dot description. Okay, and the style that we want to apply to it is it will be material theme. Now be careful, don't use material theme the top one, use material theme the second one. Material theme typography dot body 1, and the color that we want for it is light gray, which is something we've defined before, okay, in the colors file. So let's have a look and see what it looks like. So we're just expecting to see a couple of text things just below each other. And let's give it a second. While we're busy with that, I'm going to continue with, okay, you can see it looks a little weird, but there are 4 episodes, and if I scroll, there will be more. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to define 3 columns. So that would be equivalent to PJ's VStacks. And we're going to have a column for the image, a column for the title, and a column for the download button. The reason why I'm using columns is because I want to define a specific width for them. So the first one will have the image in, but I'm not going to use image directly. I'm going to use surface. Now, the reason for that is I want to use shape. I want to have rounded corners for it. So we're going to use material theme. It's a shape, shapes dot small. So that will have a rounded corners of 4 dp. Now, next, we're going to have our image, which will use a painter resource. I hope you guys are all following. It's a little difficult with lots of things flashing around on the screen, but I hope it's okay. And that ID that we're going to pass in now is just the episode's image. Now, I want you to notice something else here. We've got a content description. Content descriptions are for accessibility, so screen readers can read what the image is about. So maybe say the episode title. Okay. So that will be the image. Let's render this along, and we can just carry on in the meantime. So we're expecting to see like image, text, image, text, image, text, and hopefully it will do that. What is it doing? Oh no, I think I clicked the wrong thing. Oh no, okay. I started the AVD, which is not what I, that's fine. That is exactly the wrong button to press if you want to show the deploy, if you want to do the preview, that is to deploy it onto an AVD. But you can see what I mean here. We've got images and then text interspersed. Great. Our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create some text, and the text is going to be the episode title, and the style is going to be, oh, of course, the AVD is not really going berserk and eating my Android Studio. I'm sorry. Okay, the style is going to be material theme dot typography dot h2, but we want to make the title pop a little bit. So we're going to copy it and say the font weight. Oh my goodness, font weight. The font weight is font weight of bold, which is right over there. Okay, sorry for this big image. Okay, our next text that we're going to have is just the duration. Length, sorry. And style is exactly the same. The title, we just wanted it to pop a little bit. Okay, great. Okay, and let's have a look and see what it is now. So I'm not going to press this. I'm going to press that. Okay, and the next one, while we wait for that to render, is another image, which we can do directly because we don't want that roundly cornered. Okay, it looks a bit yucky, but it's still rendering. It's gonna fail. Okay, never mind. We will do that now. Don't stress. I've got this. Oh, apparently I had it. Okay. R.drawable dot and the download button. And then we can give a content description, which will be download. So now this code is nice and compilable. So let's compile it. And it should render then. Okay, what I want to talk to you in the meantime is that we want to make a column width. So width isn't necessarily a attribute on column. Okay, I'm being a little bit fast for this guy. Okay, so width isn't necessarily an attribute on column. So if something isn't a attribute, it's probably a modifier. This is a handy tip from you to me, or the other way around, from me to you. Modifier.width, and that's going to define a relative width for the column. So we're going to define 1f for width. Let's see. Okay, let's see what I did wrong. Weight, it's not width, it's weight. Okay. Okay. And then this guy is also going to have a weight, but we're going to give it a little bit more weight so that it looks a bit nicer. And then this one also. But it's small, so only 0.5. Paddings, we do similar to these weights. It's also modifiers that we add on the rows and the columns. And that's basically what it looks like. I'm not going to fiddle with it too much. Let's just add a little bit of padding just to show what it looks like. So it's modifier.padding. You can check if you are interested in knowing what pattern that is, or if you know what pattern that is, if there's a design pattern like that, please add it to the chat and maybe you can win the prize. I don't know, maybe the Joy-Con Nigeria people have a prize. But let's have a look. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding 4DP to the sides and to the top and the bottom. So we also want to maybe add a 4DP. Let's make this just horizontal. So it's actually overloaded very nicely. And we also want to add a padding here. Okay. And just 4.5 DP. DP is the extension function on an integer, which is nice because then you can sort of define the style or define DPs, PX, whatever, and have it look like you've got a united integer, which is really nice. Okay, great. So it looks kind of okay, and I think I'm going to stop here. So let's get going. I think we've still got some presentation stuff left, so I'm just going to start sharing. Peter-John, are you still there? Oh, good. Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed that.
Give Pam a round of applause. That was really great.
Thank you. Yay.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump back to the slides. So that was our little Clone Wars. Yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let's take a breather now, and let's get into a few questions about this declarative UI. So what now? A few questions that have kind of come up like repeatedly around, I guess, declarative UI, we're going to kind of address now. So the first one is, when should I start using declarative UI? And I think this one is a little bit tricky, just because you got to kind of figure out when is stable, when stable is stable enough for you, and also when what your application state is at the moment, what your audience state is. Most of these platforms now come with like requirements. So for Android, it's Android 21 and up, which is not really that much of a problem because most people are pretty much 21 and up now. But for an iOS point of view, you have to have iOS 13 and above, and there's only iOS 13 and 14 at the moment. 15 is in beta, so you pretty much only have like N-1 at the moment, which could be a problem for the team or your customers who might have not updated to the latest iOS version. You also might have to deal with a few bugs since, like, especially with Jetpack Compose, it's pretty much new. It came out like, if you're looking at 1.0, it's like a three-week-old toolkit. SwiftUI does have at least its third year of iterations now coming out with iOS 15, so it's a little bit better. But I mean, yeah, there's going to be quite a few bugs and items that are going to kind of come out of that. And then you're also probably going to have to think of a migration strategy for your team or just your application. Like, how are you going to migrate? Are you going to kind of do keep a few custom views, or are you going to like look at a strategy of revamping your whole application? So there's definitely a migration strategy that you might have to do within your team or in your personal projects or whatever it is. So one of the big questions also is, I'm new to Android and iOS, should I still learn the old stuff? And it's a yes and no answer. From my point of view, I think you should still learn the old stuff in terms of like at least being able to read Java and read Objective-C. And because you might have to work in a project that has a little bit of legacy code, or you might have to fix a bug that actually has, that's written in Java or Objective-C. Also, you might also be working with, still working in a place that still uses the old view system, since this is very new. So it is good to pretty much know how story reports work and how XML views work, and all of those type of things. So it's definitely worth learning. Yeah, so that's my opinion on that. So Pam, what about architectures? What works best for Compose?
So for architectures, you're going to have architectures like, your recommended one is MVVM, the one recommended by Google. But at the end of the presentation, we're going to give a resource by Garima Jain, where she talks about MVI. And the too long didn't read version of it is, yes, you can do MVI with Jetpack Compose. What about Swift?
Yeah, so Swift, from an Apple perspective, we always used to have this MVC, or people used to call a massive view controller, that Apple used to always promote. But now with SwiftUI, Apple's actually promoting MVVM. And I think this is a good step in the right direction. So SwiftUI is very much built around the MVVM architecture. But people are creating composable architectures which work quite well with SwiftUI. So I think, yeah, you pretty much you can pick and choose whatever you want. Some people still use Viper. So I think there's quite a few architectures out there that does help with creating, I guess, a clean separation of concerns and all of that type of application.
Right.
Cool.
So our next question is, I've struggled with theming on Android in the past. Is Jetpack Compose going to make it any easier? And the answer is we hope so, but I definitely think so. So the one thing is that you're going to have to understand how material design is sort of structured and fits together. What makes a theme a material design theme? Because Jetpack Compose is kind of like material first. So you're going to have to understand the basic concepts, but you can have a look at material.io, and that should explain most things for you. Something else that is good to remember is that you can also use, because all your resources, your code is all in one language, you can navigate between things very easily. Like in Android, I always got stuck between creating a style and having attributes and doing and having a theme. And I would always get stuck and it was just crazy. But now you can click on through things, and it just makes it so much easier to find things and to factor things and to just make things great. All right. So the last thing that I want to mention on theming with Jetpack Compose is you can use something called MVC Adapter. Now, MVC Adapter is going to allow you to use your pre-Jetpack Compose theme in Jetpack Compose. So it adapts your view system theme to Jetpack so that you can actually use it in Jetpack Compose, which is really cool. So you don't have to actually go and rewrite your theme just to maybe start playing around with Jetpack Compose. Our next question is about accessibility. Getting accessibility right is hard. Will Jetpack Compose improve that? So I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with somebody from Google once about accessibility, and they said that the view system made it really tricky for them to get accessibility right. So that meant that, for example, as you read through with a screen reader like TalkBack, there was weird glitches and things that didn't make sense for a user or for somebody using screen reader to understand. So the hope is that they are going to improve the way that this toolkit is actually going to work or give accessibility features. So I think that they really have considered accessibility as a top level kind of feature, because if you think about the way that we were looking at that image composable and it had content description right there, you can set it to null, but you kind of focused on it because it's already there. And there's a great article by Fanny Demi. The resources at the end of the presentation, and we're also going to tweet out those two resources. But she talks about accessibility on Jetpack Compose and everything you need to know about how to get it right. So I would really recommend, if you're starting to use Jetpack Compose and you know accessibility is maybe difficult for you, or definitely a product priority, which it should be, then have a look at that article.
Cool. So what about performance, especially on older devices? So I'm going to start off with iOS. So on older devices, there's not really any kind of performance issues with iOS and SwiftUI. They've optimized it really, really well to pretty much work just as well as the old view system. Where performance does kind of hinder a little bit is with certain components. So the way you actually compose, or you're actually like the way you actually create your view. So there's performance issues like where they say like rendering with a list versus rendering with like a for each loop. Within SwiftUI, there's some performance penalties that people have pretty much spoken about. But most of the components there have been created and optimized really, really well. And I think now with the third iteration of SwiftUI, they've made immense performance enhancements on many of the components itself. But like on older devices that I've actually used it on, it pretty much like works exactly the same across the new iPhones to an iPhone 6S. What about Android, Pam?
Right, so Android, yes, it's perhaps not the best that it could be right now, but remember that the Vue system has about 10 years on, extra time that it's been playing around for 10 years. So they've been working on optimizing the Vue system for 10 years. So it obviously will be more performant, but they are working on performance, and they are doing, especially now, there's still a lot of low hanging fruit to use and to optimize and so on. I want but just before we do, I'm going to leave these two resources on the screen. So the one is about MBI, Jetpack Compose, Missing Piece to the MBI Puzzle by Garima Jain, one of my colleagues. She's excellent. And Best Practices to Build Accessible Apps with Jetpack Compose by Fanny Demi. Those are the links to both of them. I will tweet out, and I'm sure that Peter-John will retweet or whatever. So whoever you're following, you'll get the link. We want to go over to Q&A for about 4 minutes. But if we don't get to your question, we will definitely get a copy of all the questions, and we will tweet out the responses a little bit later. Peter-John, are you right for Q&A?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay, let's have a look. Oh, goodness. Okay. In addition, okay. Does Jetpack Compose make use of adapters for lists, and how does navigation component remain the same or is different? Okay, so Jetpack Compose doesn't have to have like a recycler view, because the lazy column and lazy row is performant enough to actually only render what's on screen. So you don't actually need to use adapters for, you would, for example, have adapters for a list or for recycler view, but no, you don't need to do that. For navigation components, I'm not really very good with it. I think that I haven't actually played with navigation components in Jetpack Compose, but the person to follow is Yossi Wolf. He wrote a very good article on navigation and Jetpack Compose recently. So I will just drop his name in the chat, but it's Yossi Wolf. Would you have preferred using lazy list column? I think it's lazy column, but it is more performant than iterating over, just having the list, and it also makes it automatically scrollable. Another question is, should I be concerned about ANR? Not necessarily. I don't think so. We are using at GoDaddy Studio, we're starting to use Jetpack Compose. Haven't seen any ANRs in production. It's not front-facing stuff yet, but we are starting to use it, and maybe in a couple of weeks I'll say there's no ANRs ever. Okay. Maybe with okay, the questions are just going crazy. I think there's efficient migration from legacy RTO to declarative UI. Any tips on best approaches? Maybe Peter-John, you want to take that question?
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit like you kind of have to look at your team. I think everybody kind of just like learning the new Vue system within your team, kind of taking out some time. I know that there were some peeps I can't remember the company now, but what they used to do is they did like a Friday session where everybody in their team pretty much they sat down and they built some random screens and stuff like that in Jetpack Compose. So kind of like taking out a day of like doing work and kind of like peer programming with teammates and trying to kind of figure things out. That's a really good approach. And this is not necessarily something that's already in your application, just building some random screens and stuff like that. And then from there, as you guys get more comfortable with Jetpack Compose, maybe look at screens that are not always like front-facing within an application. So I would say like maybe like something like settings or something, or if you have like, I don't know, like some kind of README screen or something, try and build those smaller screens until you get a lot more confident and comfortable with actually working with Jetpack Compose or SwiftUI, and actually working with the whole state model and how you actually react to state and all of that. So I think that would probably be the best if you're doing that, or if you just have some spare time, maybe start a side project and build it in Jetpack Compose. I think that's always great.
Yeah, I think that's all that we have time for, folks. I see there is a couple of more questions, and we'll definitely answer them on those on Twitter for you. So PJ's handle is at PJ Apples with a Z at the end, and mine is Pamela A. Hill. All right, thank you very much, everyone. It was lovely to be able to speak to you, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Cheers.
Peter-John, nice to have you here. If everyone can hear me, we're going to take about 5 minutes